the latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in West Yorkshire on the Leeds Inner Ring Road. The A58M, of course, partly blocked where a lorry's broken down between Kirkstall Road and Clay Pit Lane. And the M1 in Leicestershire is down to a single lane northbound. Everyone's been funneled into the outside lane just after junction 24, the East Midlands Airport turn-off, where a lorry's caught fire, causing long queues past the scene. A number of fire officers remain on scene. And the A1 remains shut in Lincolnshire, northbounds heading north of Grantham because of flooding. And just over the border south of Newark-on-Trent in Nottinghamshire, the A1 is closed southbound as well. The western stretch of the M25 is queuing clockwise after the motorway was held briefly after the M40 following an accident. And in Worcestershire, north of Bromsgrove, the A38 closed off the M5 for a police investigation. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang. From treats to holidays to fun times with the family, a totally tax-free £50,000 in cash could make you feel alive in 2025. And just one entry into the Great British Giveaway really could make £50,000 cash all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
A very, very good evening to you. It's 7 p.m. Welcome to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, standing in for the big man, Nigel Farage himself. On tonight's show, tech billionaire Elon Musk says Nigel Farage is not fit to lead Reform UK. We'll look at the reasons why the founder of X has turned on him, as it was only on Saturday when Farage said this.
Beside him, he's got Elon, who is a proper hero, who believes in free speech. And free speech doesn't mean you agree with every single word that everyone says.
Well, the bromance is off, or is it? Seems to be back on. And in a short while, I was speaking live in the studio to the former UKIP and Brexit donor, Aaron Banks. That's next. And the Prime Minister brushed off questions on the need for a full public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal early today as jumping on the bandwagon of the far right. And only 14 years of Tory leadership ended, have they put forward an amendment to require a full national inquiry into the rape gangs grooming scandal. But is this too little, too late from the Conservatives? And an astonishing new report today shows that foreigners are 3.5 times as likely to be arrested for sex crimes as British citizens. More on that and how difficult it is to get the information out of police departments. That's all coming next. But first is your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you and good evening. In the top stories, the Home Secretary says the government will make it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. Yvette Cooper told the Commons this afternoon the Safeguarding Minister has met with Professor Alexis Jay and survivors and convened the first dedicated cross-government group to drive forward change and ensure victims' voices remain at the very heart of this process. The government will also be establishing a victims and survivors panel to advise on wider work around sexual exploitation and abuse. Well, that's as the Prime Minister's defended his position as Director of Public Prosecutions, saying child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening and it was something he had tackled head-on whilst in that role. Sir Keir Starmer also hit back at Elon Musk over his comments on X that claimed Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips is an evil witch and deserved to be in jail. Well, Yvette Cooper told MPs this afternoon there is no excuse for anyone not to take crimes of child sexual abuse seriously.
Nor is there any excuse for anyone not to recognise and act on the deep harm and damage from organised gang exploitation, abuse, sexual assaults and rape. 10 years ago, 2 reports by Alexis Jay and Louise Casey in Rotherham found that 1,400 children were sexually exploited, raped by multiple perpetrators, trafficked across other towns, abducted, beaten, threatened with guns, even children who had been doused in petrol, girls as young as 11 who were raped. And their reports identified then, a decade ago, a failure to confront Pakistani heritage gangs and, quote, a widespread perception that they should downplay the ethnic dimensions.
A 39-year-old man has been charged with sending malicious communications to the Safeguarding Minister amid criticism from Elon Musk. Devon and Cornwall Police says Jack Bennett has been charged with 3 counts of malicious communications. The messages were sent between April last year and January this year, involving 3 victims. Well, commenting on the criticism of Ms Phillips from Elon Musk, the Home Secretary says the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls has dedicated her career to tackling sexual violence and abuse and to being a voice for victims and survivors of the most terrible crimes, including child sexual abuse. 2 major incidents have been declared and more than 100 people have now been rescued as floodwater inundates Lincolnshire and Leicestershire. Well, yellow warnings for snow and ice are in effect across large parts of the UK as flooding and snow cause delays on the roads and railways and force hundreds of schools to close. Manchester Airport has reopened its runways after they were closed this morning due to heavy snow, but delays remain. And the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced his resignation. Trudeau has faced growing pressure from inside his governing Liberal Party after a surge in support for the opposition Conservatives in the polls. The 53-year-old steps down after 9 years in office and he says he'll step down as soon as his party choose a replacement for him. Trudeau said earlier today that although he's a fighter, the parliament he's serving is paralysed under his leadership. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Welcome to Farage. Got loads to get stuck into, so let's get cracking. Now, Nigel Farage has said he's prepared to forego donations in order to defend Reform UK's principles after Elon Musk turned against him at the weekend. Last night, Elon Musk has called for Nigel Farage to be replaced as leader of Reform UK, just weeks after reports that the multi-billionaire was in talks to donate up to $100 million to the party. Well, last week, Elon Musk launched a series of attacks on Sir Keir Starmer once again over grooming gangs, whilst also calling for the release of jailed far-right activist Tommy Robinson. The dramatic U-turn comes after Nigel refused to join Elon Musk's call to release Tommy Robinson from prison. There's a lot to get stuck into there, and joining me now to discuss this in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is Aaron Banks, a businessman and the former UKIP and Brexit donor. Aaron Banks, welcome to the studio.
Good evening.
Let's start with that top line point. The bromance appears to be over. Elon Musk is saying the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. What say you?
Well, I think it's Elon Musk is a businessman. That's very different to a politician. And I think you've already seen a tweet come out, I think, this evening, where Elon's agreed with Nigel on another tweet. I think often businessmen are used to getting their own way. Nigel stood his ground, and Musk rather petulantly sort of set that little tweet saying, well, maybe reform needs another leader. But I think it's more about him trying to push Nigel into supporting this kind of campaign about Tommy Robinson and him being unfairly in prison.
What's your take on that?
And I think the bromance will be on-off, continually. I think when Trump gets into power, you see this over and again. He uses a technique to push people around a bit. And I'm quite glad Nigel stood up and said, this is not with us.
Well, the bromance seems to be on and off like a light switch
exactly.
at the moment. At the moment, it's back on. No doubt by the end of the show, it's going to be back off. What about this position? It's not a new position, to be fair. Like Nigel Farage has consistently said that when he got involved with UKIP, which of course you were involved in those days as a high-profile donor, there was always an issue with Tommy Robinson and the like. Is it the right thing to do? There has been a big backlash because no matter what we say, a lot of people who support Nigel Farage also support Tommy Robinson. Is it the right thing to sever the cord like this so publicly so soon?
I don't think there's ever been a cord to sever. I think it's a case of, when you looked at UKIP, Nigel never wanted the far right or, the Tommy Robinson types to come into UKIP, and there's a very good reason for that.
Is it fair to call them the far right? That's what Keir Starmer says.
I'm not saying it's like Keir Starmer, but, in the sense that, I tweeted Tommy Robinson's actually done a good service raising this issue. That doesn't mean that you have to approve of him as a person. And I think that's the issue for reform. It, having got to 22% in the polls, it's vitally important, and Nigel knows this from previous issues, that you've got to keep it clean.
Do you think that...
look at the last election, how Reform was criticised for not vetting candidates and the publicity there was.
But there has been a backlash. Nigel Farage has stood by his guns. And is it the point that in order to get elected, you need to be seen as a more centre ground party to get that widespread?
I don't think it's a centre ground issue. I mean, you look at what Elon Musk's done in one day. He's done more for, bringing forward publicity over what happened than the last 10 years of, the political class. So I fully agree with what Elon Musk has said. What I don't agree is that Nigel's in some way being weak because he's, not wanting to bring Tommy Robinson into the Reform Party or to, accept some of the views he's got.
But there hasn't been, a lot of people say there hasn't been a public approach from Tommy Robinson to join Reform. So why was it necessary, do you believe, for Nigel to say there's no route forward when the approach hadn't been made?
I don't know why Nigel would say that necessarily, but I do think that, we saw it before in UKIP where that issue occurred there where Nigel actually left, and then I think the then leader brought Tommy Robinson or came close to these people, and it destroyed the party, and it would do again. But I think Nigel's actually, in one way, standing up to a tech billionaire like Elon Musk with the power he's got and said there are lines, and no, I disagree. And
I think we can get that tweet on the screen now. This is, it seems to be Aaron Banks, that the bromance is back on.
That's what I mean. And I don't...
This is Nigel Farage earlier on criticising Keir Starmer when he's mentioned earlier that it was a far-right position to be supporting a full inquiry. On that tweet there, it says, Keir Starmer is sweeping the failures of the establishment under the carpet. Nothing less than a full national inquiry into the rape gangs will do. Elon Musk has simply said, yes. So it seems he's back in his good books again. So is that evidence, you think, that this is, as you said, a powerful political man testing out Nigel Farage?
This is absolutely what Trump does. It's exactly out of the playbook. I mean, you've got to remember businessmen have got a low tolerance for politicians, as a general rule. And I would say I'm quite in that camp as well. And you're used to, as a businessman, telling people what to do. And I think the fact that Nigel's actually come out and said, you know what, no, I don't agree with you, Elon Musk will have a lot more respect for Nigel Farage for being prepared to say that than just, kowtowing to his particular point of view. And I think Elon Musk, by the way, called for Trump's resignation or not to not to run again as president 2 years ago. Now he's back with him. So I think you're going to see a lot of toing and froing and quite a lot of excitement.
Now, Nigel Farage has stood by his principles.
Yeah.
In fact, he hasn't changed his position.
It's remained unchanged.
It's the same position as he's held historically, so there's no inconsistency there. But it could be a costly decision.
I don't think so.
Nigel's always said this $100 million story is for the birds, but there was a lot of rumours, a whiff of a significant tranche of money coming from Elon Musk to Reform UK. Could this jeopardise that money?
Well, maybe it will do, maybe it won't. I mean, if you look at the way Reform is growing, it's raised £1 million over Christmas just in memberships. And that you can see with Nick Candy becoming treasurer, there's a whole raft of people lining up to support Reform. And I don't think, it's reliant on a big Musk donation or not. It's going the right way and it's winning.
If the coffers are a little less full than they were or could have been, you've got deep pockets. You've donated before to UKIP, you've donated to Brexit. Might this tempt you in, Aaron Banks, to donating a significant sum to Reform UK?
Well, never say never. I've done it before. But I think the way the party's going, actually getting a grassroots membership that's grown as quickly as it is, that's much more impressive, actually, than a donation from a tech billionaire.
But Nick Candy has said that the phone has been going off.
It has.
Lee Anderson told us on my show that he had a 7-figure donation the day that Mr. Candy came in as treasurer. But we're still waiting on some big-name donors. Come on, Aaron Banks. Put a few quid on the table. You've got a few, Bob. Are you going to chuck in?
Not at the moment, but that's not to say I won't do in the future.
And what kind of sum do you think would be appropriate to be donating to a political party that needs a good headline?
You're talking about me or just in general? I don't know. I mean, Elon Musk talking about 100 million and set the bar pretty high, hasn't he?
So you'd be less than that?
Probably.
But what, 7 figures?
Are you going to donate to the party?
I'm not allowed to. I'm an impartial journalist.
Of course, yeah.
You of course, are a previous donor. Simply asking if you think that, you've been very politically involved. You've been watching this all along. A lot of people feel that this is the Reform Party's big chance of trying to get in. The chairman's ears have been resolute. He keeps saying...
I'm certainly happy to get involved with Reform going forward. And I think actually it's you go back to the point about why people don't come forward to support political parties. UKIP had trouble attracting people like Nick Candy, big donors, for the very reason that it had a slight association with some of these people. And I think, we've got to be very brutal about how you go forward with Reform. It's got to be kept clean, and the eye is on the prize of winning. It's not, we want to win an election.
So do you feel that a residual, perhaps, benefit of the diссociation with the likes of Tommy Robinson might be that it encourages donors to be more likely to come in?
And it's not just it's unfair to say, with Tommy Robinson, he has highlighted an absolute national scandal. And I think Elon Musk has come to it fresh and is outraged, as people should be outraged. I mean, the political class have hidden this up for 10 years. Elon Musk has seen it, and I think he's reacting to it in a way that, is perfectly natural. Despite the fact that the bromance seems to be in out, shaking
I think it's
all
on
about. At the moment.
Do you think it's back on? Do you think a lot of people are upset, particularly from the political left, that Elon Musk seems to be having a huge impact on British policies? Do you see that as external interference? I mean, people like yourselves might have complained very, very highly about people like Barack Obama getting involved, for example, during the Brexit referendum. But I
think Elon Musk has got legitimate business interests in the UK, and he's obviously got an affinity with the UK. You could say during the referendum, I think some of the big American banks donated to Remain from their UK subsidiaries. If you don't like it, change the law.
So do you believe that Nigel Farage and Reform have the potential to lead the country at the next general election?
I think they can, and I think they will, but I think Nigel's being very, defensive of of Reform as a vehicle, and rightly so. You only had to look at the last election where, in a space of 5 weeks, they put a list of candidates together, made a few mistakes, and got absolutely lacerated for it. So it's very important for the future of this country that he gets it right.
So, Aaron Banks, just to conclude our interview, I know I've been probing and teasing you on this, but you are poised to sign a significant cheque to Reform UK.
Well, I didn't say that at all. That's total misinformation, isn't it? I didn't say that.
But you fancy it. You want to get back... I can
didn't say that at all.
I can tell you want to get back involved in politics, and why not? No, you said...
Well, if I did, I certainly wouldn't be announced on GB News, would I?
Well, I can only try.
You can try. Well done.
Aaron Banks, beautiful to have you, and thank you very much for joining us here tonight on Farage. Thank you very, very much. And totally ignoring my question. Beautiful. Cheers. Now, coming up next, we continue this conversation with long-term friend of Nigel Farage and the former spokesman for Reform, Gawain Towler. Plus, the Prime Minister said those calling for a full inquiry into the rape gangs were jumping on the bandwagon of the far right.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word...
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, standing in for the big man. Now, are those calling for an inquiry into grooming gangs, rape gangs, jumping on a bandwagon of the so-called far right? Well, that's the claim made earlier on today by Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, when he spoke to reporters at a press conference. And he also appeared to accuse Elon Musk of spreading lies, claiming that many of those calling for an inquiry are not interested in the victims, only themselves.
It is something about the nature of our politics. Because once we lose the anchor that truth matters, in the robust debate we must have, then we're on a very slippery slope. And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics. because a robust debate can only be based on the true facts. And that's why this is actually an important point about our politics, not about what anybody may or may not say on Twitter. That actually isn't the main issue. The main issue is, what are politicians here doing to stand up for the things that matter to our democracy and the way that we have robust debate. That's why I want to call this out.
Well, there we go. We're all far right again now. And joining me now to discuss this is my wonderful panel, the former Reform spokesman Gawain Towler and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Gentlemen, welcome to the show and a very, very happy New Year. Nigel, I'm going to start with you. Does Sir Keir Starmer have a far-right problem? He calls everybody he disagrees with far-right, and it's not helping.
No, and I tend to agree with that. I think it was an unfortunate phrase. The point he should have made is that what Kemi Badenoch is doing is certainly jumping on a bandwagon. She's using the whole rape gang issue for populist politicking. The point it comes down to here about an inquiry is that if you have an inquiry, what you do is you delay measures that will actually stop kids being protected in future, and that is the most important thing.
But we've had decades, Gawain Towler, of children not being protected, and my point is quite simple. I had Maggie Oliver on my show earlier on.
Who's a great woman.
We spoke to survivors today. We spoke to a father today whose daughter, Marlon West, his daughter, Scarlett, was raped, drugged, kidnapped, abused from age 13. We spoke to him and we said the Prime Minister seems to think people like you are far right. Maggie Oliver, she said, I'm incandescent with rage. When will they stop calling us far right? It's not far right to call this out. It's the right thing to do.
Of course not. And if you look at the first politicians to call it out, people like Anne Cryer, people like Sarah Champion, people like Sam Dunchuk in Rochdale.
Labour.
These are all Labour politicians, because they were the Labour politicians on the ground where these things were happening, and they were pushed back. So I think it is outrageous to describe people who are upset about the mass rape of young children as far right. I mean, surely, and in fact, Yvette Cooper herself today in the House was saying that she was outraged. Well, if she's outraged, surely she's far right too. David Blunkett was far more far right than any Home Secretary has been for the last 20 years since him. This is absurd, and it is attempting to tar everybody with a brush who criticises the government. I think Keir Starmer, first, he spent all his time saying, well, a lot of you were talking about Kemi, but he was saying, Kemi Badenoch should be calling out Elon Musk. Elon Musk is now an excuse not to handle things. And I think that whilst Nigel is talking about if you have an inquiry, you don't bring in robust laws to stop things. No, you bring in robust laws to stop things, but you still have an inquiry, because the inquiry isn't about the rape gangs. The inquiry should be about why the environment created a situation where people felt they were being good by ignoring it.
But what I'm saying here is don't have an immediate inquiry. The first thing you have to do is actually bring in the recommendations of the J report.
Absolutely.
The Tories didn't do that.
They failed miserably.
They had plenty of chances to do that. They must be brought in at the moment. Now, if you have another inquiry, you can't do that. So my point is get the various recommendations up. So a child protection authority, so everything is joined up. Government departments are far too fragmented. Force tech firms to stop putting child abuse images online. Those are the various things that
is against the law already.
She came up with. Then, if you need an inquiry into the rape gangs, certainly have one, but do it in the right order.
It is not an inquiry into the rape gangs. The inquiry that's required is why civil society thought it was better to let children be raped than to give the far right any publicity and allow them to take advantage of a situation. It was more important to stop. The first politician really to dig into this wasn't somebody mainstream. No, it was, I'm sorry to say, but it was the BNP and Nick Griffin. And people went, we would prefer to stamp on the far right rather than stop the mass rape of children. And that is a huge problem. If they'd done the job properly, the BNP would not have gained any politics from it, because they'd have stopped this happening at source.
And Nigel, isn't that the point? You know, the abject failure, and more than that, the demonisation of anybody who chose to speak out as being far right created the monster. It allowed people to step into this space because mainstream politicians, police forces, councils. Now, they simply lacked the cojones to tackle this issue, and that's what caused the problem in the first place.
Yeah, but exactly. And where the issue arises is, were they frightened of being branded racist if they did?
Yes.
So that's the problem. Nothing to do with politics here.
Well, it is.
Well, that is politics. That's exactly politics.
You're arguing about the phrase far right. What we're talking about here is, as Gwayne's just pointed out, it was a number of Labour politicians who brought this up, who battled to try and get justice.
Down.
And yes, they were by the Tory government.
No, and not just by the Tory government, by their own people.
No, by the Tory government.
Remember the memo that went to the police from Jackie Smith, the Home Secretary, under Gordon Brown, basically saying most of them deserve it anyway. But that was don't make a big fuss about this.
I think it was going a little far.
All right, gents, can I bring in that tweet by Kemi Badenoch earlier on? Let's get it on the screen now. She's saying, I was serious when I said it's time to get justice for victims. So on Wednesday, Conservatives will put forward an amendment to the Children's Wellbeing Bill to require a full national inquiry into the rape gang's grooming scandal. If the amendment is selected, I hope MPs from all parties will vote to support the inquiry so we can do right by the victims and end the culture of cover-ups. Gawain Towler, they had 14 years to do this. Why are they suddenly rattling their cage now? They're in opposition. They avoided the questions too.
Because Elon Musk tweeted about it. That's why. Simple as that. That's why. And I think, I'm sad to say, I think she is jumping on that bandwagon. And I remember, 2008, 2009, being in Rotherham, talking to some of the victims, and the level of political corruption up there, which meant that councillors were avoiding the subject, where there was electoral fraud going on. There was a whole series of, and these were all interlinked, where victims knew councillors who they recognised as part of the problem, policemen who were part of the problem. So this has been going on for so long. And yes, I sort of agree with Nigel. You get to get these laws in place first. But as I say, the inquiry shouldn't so much be into the rape gangs themselves. I think we've had a series of inquiries into the rape gangs, but into the atmosphere that allowed this to grow.
And the point is, today, Yvette Cooper gave an emergency statement in the Commons, and she said it's never an excuse to use race or ethnicity or community relations as an excuse to not investigate. Nigel Nelson, that's precisely what has happened. And surely, by calling a full inquiry, once and for all, they can put this issue to bed. It's not political. We're not trying to cover anything up. Let's be totally transparent. The Labour Party won't do that. Why? Are they afraid that it might actually haunt them?
For the reason it is we've got to get the priorities right, and the first thing is to protect the children of the future. The best way of doing that...
What about should have been let down for decades?
It should have happened decades ago.
But it hasn't.
It should have happened 10 years ago at least. That's what the Tories should have done. They didn't do it. Labour have now promised to implement the full recommendations of the Jay report. Do that first, and then if it's necessary to have an inquiry after that into what you're talking about, let's have one.
I think you can set the terms of reference to that future inquiry, and that won't get in the way.
No, you can't. No, you can't, because the first thing you've got to do is see if the laws come in that actually work, that the recommendations...
Whether the laws work or not and stop people being raped does not stop the need for an inquiry. And actually, holding people to account, heads should roll.
Okay,
hold them to account, certainly. I agree with that.
Gents, we have to stop there. Thank you very much. Spirited start to the show. And in response to those concerns, a government spokesperson from the Home Office has issued the following statement. They said no child should ever suffer sexual abuse or exploitation, and it is paramount that we do more to protect vulnerable children, which is why we are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Now, up next, shocking new statistics have revealed that migrants are more than 3.5 times more likely to be arrested for sex crimes than British nationals. I'll be speaking to the man who brought us this amazing report after the break.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Turning icy out there as temperatures fall away sharply. Some places continuing to see some snow showers as well. Low pressure clearing away out into the North Sea. That's what brought all the snow over the weekends. But behind it, the air is still coming down from the Arctic. Snow showers across northern Scotland. A mixture of rain, sleet and snow. Hail showers for Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. But any kind of shower could turn things quite icy as we see those temperatures falling down below freezing, -1, -2, even in towns and cities, rural spots below. Across parts of Scotland, well below, -6, -8 perhaps, across parts of southwest Scotland. In northern Scotland, maybe not quite as cold because here it'll be windy still and plenty more snow showers coming in here also. So again, accumulations likely across parts of northern Scotland. We could also see a covering through the night and in the morning across parts of Northern Ireland. More of a mixture again close to coast of rain and sleet, but certainly across parts of Wales, southwest England, some places waking up to more snow. And as I said, even if those showers are of rain, it could well turn things very icy for the morning commute. So just be aware of that first thing in the morning. Plenty more showers to come through the day across North Wales, northwest England, Northern Ireland. The showers on and off in the southwest too, and more snow showers in northern Scotland. Much of eastern England, southern England, largely dry, fine and sunny. Not as windy as today, but still cold. Temperatures only 2 or 3 degrees across the north. 6 or 7 further south. A hard frost on Tuesday night. And then on Wednesday, well, many places dry, fine and bright. But down to the south, we need to keep our eyes on this. It's not a guarantee, but if this wet weather hits the colder conditions across southern parts of England, we could see some further significant snowfall. One to watch at this stage. Met Office warnings and all the Environmental Agency flood warnings are on the websites.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, covering for the big man. Now, foreign nationals are more than 3 times, in fact 3.5 times as likely to be arrested for sexual offences as British citizens, as you can see on your screen there. And the research was conducted by the Centre for Migration Control. It also found that for all crimes, foreign nationals were arrested at twice the rate of native Brits. And I'm very pleased to say I'm now joined by the research director for the Centre for Migration Control, the man who formulated this report, Robert Bates. I'm also joined by my panel. That's the Reform spokesman, Gawain Towler, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Rob, let's start with you. You and I have spoken many, many times in the past about how this data doesn't exist. If it does, they're very, very reluctant to release it. Some truly astonishing figures here. How did you get this data? Where's it from?
So if we were a proper functioning country, you'd go to the Home Office, you'd request the information, and they'd have it ready. They'd have it already compiled. They'd have been monitoring the situation. Unfortunately, Britain doesn't seem to be working like that. So what you've got to do is you've got to go the next step beyond that. You've got to go to those individuals that are on the front line. You've got to speak to the police forces, and you've got to ask them directly to access their databases. It's called NOMIS. You've got to ask them to extract information on custodies, on embassies that they've had to contact because they've had to arrest a foreign national, and you have to really ask them to look through their records and to compile this information. The thing that I found really interesting when speaking to the police forces was that this wasn't information they already had access to. This wasn't information that was already on tap. It was information that they almost didn't know was available to them. It was information that we almost had to walk them through step by step as to how to extract from their own systems. And this really lays bare how much of a data desert the UK is currently occupying when it comes to the migration issue. The fact that, this is crucial information, but yet those individuals that have access to it don't realise how valuable it is and don't realise that it's there.
And the next stage of that, once you had the raw data for arrest, I'm assuming you had to get the population sizes, from census data, and then cross-tabulate. And of course, that might be inaccurate because we don't know how many foreign nationals are in the country, particularly if they're here illegally. And yet, at the end of all that, you came to your data points. Talk us through, let's get that list back on screen. What's the propensity for foreign nationals to be arrested? And if you like, what is the National League of Shame?
So the headline statistic is that foreign nationals from all nationalities are twice as likely to run foul of the law as a British citizen. That number should be zero. There shouldn't be a single individual coming to the UK that is running up against our police force. There shouldn't be a single individual that is breaking our laws. If you look at the actual nationalities and those that are more likely to commit crimes or to be arrested for a crime, there's a very clear pattern that emerges of those nationalities that lead the way, as you can see on the screen.
I'll just talk you through some of the data on the screen. If you're listening on the radio, Albanians top shame, 209 arrests per 1,000, followed by Afghans, 106, Iraqis, 92.9, Algerians, 72.7, Moroccans, 70 per 1,000, 64.6 for Somalians, and just 12 per British, 12 per 1,000 for the British. What do those top nations have in common, Rob Bates? They seem to have something in common.
Yeah, they seem to be those kind of Northern African, Middle Eastern or, sub-Saharan nations that perhaps are the most culturally remote from where we are in Britain. Those are the perhaps most alien to the norms and cultural practices that we expect from individuals in this country. And I think that's a large reason why we saw the headline statistic from this report being that migrants are 3.5 times more likely to be arrested for sexual offences, violence against women and girls, child grooming, or those kind of things. These are issues that, in Britain we take an incredibly stringent line upon, and there's a consensus really about those issues and that they are beyond the pale. But I think the fact that, as we see in those statistics, there's a certain pattern between those nationalities that are more likely to be committing crimes.
And Rob Bates, nobody is saying that all Albanians or Afghans or Iraqis or Algerians or Somalians are sex offenders or even indeed criminals. This is about the propensity per population. It's just data. Facts aren't racist. And an astonishing thing that came out of this is that foreign nationals make up 26.1% of all sexual offence arrests in Britain last year. That's an astonishing overrepresentation.
It's incredibly so. They account for about 9% of the population, but yet they're accounting for 26% of those arrests. And we have a very, very serious crisis in this country at the moment when it does come to violence against women and girls. And, there's a Labour minister with the special mantle of tackling this issue. She doesn't seem to be prepared to talk, as we've seen in recent days, on the issue of grooming gangs. And, I very much doubt that she would be prepared to address the situation here and speak candidly in terms that it needs to be spoken about as to what is causing a huge uptick in these crimes against women and girls. We have a Labour government at the moment, and their response to this report really showed that. We have a Labour government that don't appreciate that there is a correlation between mass migration and migration from certain nationalities and an increase in crime. And until we recognise that very basic fact, we can't put in place any of the policy proposals, any of the policy measures that need to be taken to address this. We have currently, the Home Office doesn't even require thousands of migrants each year to provide a criminal record check as they're coming into the country. They can just come in without providing that very, very basic DBS check that you would expect anyone going to volunteer at a local football club to provide. And, this is how far removed we are from common sense at this point.
OK, Rob Bates, stick with us. I want to throw to my panel now to bring you guys in. And it's fair to point out, Rob, that it's not just the Labour Party that haven't published this data. This data hasn't been available under 14 years of Conservative rule either. I want to throw this to my panel. Let's go to you first, Gawain Towler. What are they so afraid of? Why won't they just tell us the truth? The Germans tell us the truth. The Dutch tell us the truth. The Danes tell us the truth. We get full, transparent data. Surely that's a useful tool of policing, of border control, of common sense, of policy formation.
One would have thought so. One would hope so. But clearly that's not the case. I mean, there's a couple of... As you've been talking about the data, there's a couple of questions that come to mind, and that is whether the data is slightly unfair in the sense that most migrants are somewhat younger. Foreign nationals living in the country are somewhat younger. If you slice the British population by that, by an age differential, would that have a difference on these proportions? Now, that's not to say there's any justification whatsoever, but I wonder if the data was done properly by the ONS and collected properly, and that's, I think, what we're demanding from this, is that you've had to dig this out of various different files, and I don't know exactly. This is a good guesstimate.
You're not saying they're raping more boys, okay, because they're young.
No, but I am saying that the data that's been dug out by Rob is, I wouldn't say questionable. There are the data points. You've got it out of the things. But if it is done properly, if the ONS was to do it in a comprehensive way across all police forces, across all courts, across everything of this sort, in an efficient, comprehensive way, we would get to a better truth.
OK, Nigel Nelson, that surely then paves the way for let's have full transparency, let's publish this information so we know who's committing what crimes. It helps keep people safe, it helps us form effective policing, targeted policies, and it helps keep our citizens safe.
No, I agree with that. I mean, the last time we talked about it, Martin, that we weren't sure that this kind of data was actually collected. Rob's proved that it is collected. Whether that data goes from the individual police forces to the Home Office, another point. But if it doesn't, it should. So there is no reason why there shouldn't be transparency. And you're absolutely right. It's not a racist thing to say that, but it would help to form criminal justice policy once you've got the right data. That applies right across the piece, not just to this.
And the question I ask is, OK, you're right. But what policies could we bring in that would, in response to this? What policies would you?
Apart from background checks for everyone.
But how do you do a CRB check from somebody who's coming from abroad? You have to get the OK from their government to give you a CRB check. They don't have the systems in Somalia, in other places like this. So we don't actually have the capacity. Are we saying that nobody who hasn't had a CRB check is allowed into the country? Maybe so. Maybe that's the policy. I don't know. But just to say we need these background checks, well, how are you going to get them from Afghanistan? How are you going to get them from Syria? How are you going to get them from these countries? And so what are the policies? And are they a blanket ban on anybody from those countries where you cannot have knowledge of who they are? Perhaps. Perhaps that is the answer. But these are serious questions, and they are big questions that would be based on the effective and accurate collection of data that Rob has successfully dug out.
That's why you need the data in the first place.
To work out what the policy should be.
To work out what you do next, yes.
Well, we can all agree then we need full, transparent data. Rob Bates, excellent report. You certainly got it all talking from the Centre for Migration Control. And, of course, Gawain, Nigel, excellent as ever. Thank you very, very much. Now, reply to this, the Home Office told us foreign nationals who commit heinous crimes should be in no doubt, so that we will do everything to make sure that they are not free on Britain's streets. And this includes removal from the UK. Well, there are 11,000 foreign nationals in British jails. I digress. Moving on, foreign national offenders can be convicted of several offences. We are transparent with our data and publish data frequently on returns. Well, thank you, Robert, and thank you to my panel. And coming up next, Labour may give 5 million foreign nationals the right to vote in British elections. Plus, Londoners terrified by drug dealers and vandals were told by police to play them classical music to fend off thugs. You couldn't make it up. That's next.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
After a wet few days across some parts of Spain and Portugal, it is going to become drier. However, rain will arrive across parts of Italy and Greece. A dry picture for the Canary Islands and Madeira as well. Plenty of sunny spells. Similar picture across southern parts of Spain and Portugal. However, parts of Italy stretching across to Greece and perhaps Turkey as well. Increasing cloud here, some outbreaks of rain, feeling cooler as well. The outlook, though, is for it to become much drier and sunnier.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The sportswear brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over £220, which
wow.
I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. You know, it'd be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019.
Oh.
And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's...
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney. Now, reports indicate that government ministers are exploring plans to reform election procedures by, wait for it, abolishing voter ID laws and granting 5 million foreign nationals the right to vote in UK elections. A report from the Blairite think tank, the Institute for Public Policy Research, of course, a left-leaning think tank with strong ties to Labour and that man, Tony Blair, called for a broader political debate on the concepts of citizenship and voting rights in the UK. Now, Labour was urged last night to reject these proposals, which critics view as an attempt to expand voter eligibility to millions who overwhelmingly guess what? The Labour Party outright. And joining me now to discuss this is my panel, former Reform spokesman Gawain Towler and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg has also hoved interview. I'd like to probe him for his position on that. Before I probe Sir Jacob, Nigel, come on. This is rigging the electorate. 5 million foreign nationals have no right to vote in Britain. It's not granted practically anywhere else in the world. This is just an attempt by the Labour Party to rig the books.
No. First of all, it may not happen because it's a call rather than any kind of policy. Keir Starmer did say he was going to grant it during his leadership campaign, and that was then abandoned for the general election. So the likelihood of this going ahead is pretty remote. However, if you've got EU citizens here with settled status who are paying taxes, making their lives in Britain, I don't think it's unfair to actually say to them they should have the vote too.
Gawain?
I think that if they want the vote, they should take citizenship. Simple as that.
They can do that too.
But no, they should. They don't get the vote unless they take citizenship. Because if they have not committed so much as to be one of us, then why should they have a say over
because there are people who want to keep their own nationality, and that's up to them.
But they have to have
these are people who've got a stake in Britain, who've been here for many years.
Such a stake that they do not take the step to become one of us.
You may well want to live in another country and keep your British passport. You may not want to be a citizen.
You can have joint nationality. What's the big problem?
Well, say, for instance, in America you can't. If you want to go to America and you want to remain British, you remain British.
Okay, but if an American wishes to vote in Britain, they should take British nationality.
My sister lives in America, and she's a dual national, and she can't vote in America. And that's the way it should be here, surely.
This constitution wrangling is gerrymandering. At one point you made the idea that, oh, well, it's a proposal. I don't know how many times I was working in Brussels something was flagged up and we made a fuss. It's, oh, no, it's just a proposal. And then a couple of years down the line, you try to make a fuss, it's turned up, oh, well, we were just discussing it. And then 2 years later, it's law. Oh, you should have complained at the start. Well, I'm complaining now.
Bear in mind, before Brexit, EU citizens did get a vote, but only in local elections.
And European elections.
Currently, Poles, Portuguese also get the right to vote now, but that's because of an agreement that we've got with those countries, in which case our citizens there can also vote, again, purely for local elections.
Though it is always interesting to me that you get 7 or 8 people, Brits, living in Poland and X 100,000 Poles living in Britain. The deal is not quite the same. It really isn't, and I think that is an imbalance,
we're talking here about the principle about whether they should vote.
That was a deal done intergovernmental, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like we have with Ireland.
Yeah. Gentlemen, let's bring at this point Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, waiting patiently in the wings. Is this a blatant attempt to rig elections in favour of the Labour Party?
Yes, of course it is, because they assume that foreign nationals, particularly Europeans who hated Brexit, will all vote for the Labour Party because Labour Party is anti-Brexit. It's absolute straightforward gerrymandering, and it shouldn't be allowed that if you are a foreigner, you have no right to determine His Majesty's government. It's as simple as that.
What about if you're from the Commonwealth?
Well, I think we've got to look at that. It was fine when there weren't that many, when it was a relatively small number and migration was controlled, but we've had mass migration in recent years, and this can have an effect in individual seats. And I think it's a slight romanticism about our imperial past that is over. And perhaps we should keep it for the realms, those who accept the king as king, so there is something in it for countries to maintain that link. But if they severed that link, they're independent foreign nations, they're friends of ours, they're allies. But if we're not giving votes to Americans, why are we giving them to all sorts of other people?
Fair points. Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course. State of the Nation is up next. What's on your menu, sir?
Well, I'm talking about the terrible grooming gang scandal, and it is so unbelievably awful. And what we've been reading over the weekends as some newspapers have printed some of the details of things that happened. And this lazy, liberal, multiculturalist view that you couldn't touch it because of who was involved, who the criminals were. And that's really dangerous and has done a lot of damage, I think, to harmony within this country.
It certainly has. And today, Yvette Cooper in the Commons said that people's race, ethnicity, community relations should be no excuse to not prosecute. But that's what's happened.
That, unfortunately, is what happened. There's been a basic principle that's been undermined by the race relations industry. Everybody should be equal under the law, regardless. And all this stuff about protected characteristics and so on has made some people more equal than others. And that's been fundamentally dangerous. There's one principle should be reinforced. We are all equal under the law. It should be applied to us all equally. And regardless of your race or your protected characteristic, the law should apply to you, and the police shouldn't be afraid of applying it, and people shouldn't cover it up. It's a deep disgrace what has happened, a shame for this country, and we've got now to put it right.
Today, Sir Keir Starmer branded people who want a full inquiry as far right. Do you want a national inquiry? Does that make you far right?
He is a silly man when it comes to this. Deeply, deeply silly. He was the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, the Archbishop of Canterbury is resigning about something he knew nothing about that happened before he became Archbishop. This man, this Prime Minister, was Prime Minister when these was DPP when these terrible things were happening.
We have to leave it there. So Jacob Rees-Mogg, State of the Nation is up next. Thank you to Gawain. Thanks to Nigel. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Fantastic to have your company. Thanks for the show. State of the Nation is up next. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Turning icy out there as temperatures fall away sharply. Some places continuing to see some snow showers as well. Low pressure clearing away out into the North Sea. That's what brought all the snow over the weekends. But behind it, the air is still coming down from the Arctic. Snow showers across northern Scotland. A mixture of rain, sleet and snow. Hail showers for Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. But any kind of shower could turn things quite icy as we see those temperatures falling down below freezing, -1, -2, even in towns and cities, rural spots below. Across parts of Scotland, well below, -6, -8 perhaps, across parts of southwest Scotland. In northern Scotland, maybe not quite as cold because here it'll be windy still and plenty more snow showers coming in here also. So again, accumulations likely across parts of northern Scotland. We could also see a covering through the night and in the morning across parts of Northern Ireland. More of a mixture, again, close to coast of rain and sleet, but certainly across parts of Wales, southwest England, some places waking up to more snow. And as I said, even if those showers are of rain, it could well turn things very icy for the morning commute. So just be aware of that first thing in the morning. Plenty more showers to come through the day across North Wales, northwest England, Northern Ireland. The showers on and off in the southwest too, and more snow showers in northern Scotland. Much of eastern England, southern England, largely dry, fine and sunny. Not as windy as today, but still cold. Temperatures only 2 or 3 degrees across the north. 6 or 7 further south. A hard frost on Tuesday night, and then on Wednesday, well, many places dry, fine and bright, but down to the south we need to keep our eyes on this. It's not a guarantee, but if this wet weather hits the colder conditions across southern parts of England, we could see some further significant snowfall. One to watch at this stage. Met Office warnings and all the Environmental Agency flood warnings are on the websites.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£50,000 in tax-free cash is like having over £4,000 each month to play with for a whole year. And it could be yours in the biggest Great British giveaway so far. That could be a holiday each month, your mortgage covered, or just the ability to send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines closed.